Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris.
My name is Justin.
And my name is Mike. In today's episode, we'll be going over what's on our minds, followed by our review of 8th Grade, written and directed by Burnham and starring Elsie Fisher. And then we'll be announcing the winner of our latest poll to choose our next Casually Criterion movie.
Yeah, so if you want to keep up with what we're watching next, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. If you want to send in questions, topics, you can do that on any of those, or you can email us directly at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And as always, please don't forget to go onto iTunes and give us a 5-star review, and go ahead and write, something, your thoughts, your feedback on the show, things we can do better, things you like, things you don't like, but do it within the 5-star rating so that we look good anyways.
It really helps grow the show, and we would appreciate it. Speaking of which, we have a couple of new reviews this week. Should we go ahead and dive into those now?
Yeah,
these always make me excited. Yeah.
So first we have Keverdeens that says, "Love it. I listen to a lot of film podcasts, and Casual Cinecast is one of my favorites. Their analyses are always insightful. Keep up the great work, guys." Well, thank you, Keverdeens.
We will do our best.
Yeah.
Which seems to be good enough for him or her.
The next one is from Dutch Wants a 9-ball Option.
That's such a long name.
Yeah, this says, "Great show. Good content for the fan of film." Yeah, well, thank you. Both 5 stars. We appreciate it a whole lot.
Yeah, keep them coming, guys, and we'll read your review and your name out on the show.
Absolutely. Are you guys ready to move into what's on our minds?
Always.
Been waiting all week for this.
Oh, my.
Well, that means you have to go first, Chris.
All right, I'll go first. All right, so this week I've been watching a TV show that I've already seen the first 3 seasons of, and decided to go ahead and watch the 4th season of it. And it's called You're the Worst, and it's starring Chris Greer and Aya Cash. And it's created by Stephen Falk. He had some hand in Orange is the New Black and Weeds, which I'm not as big of a fan of as this show. But You're the Worst is like this darkly comedic show about damaged people trying to have relationships. Like I said, it's in its 4th season, and this show, it started off really great. It's got a sharp, biting wit, and you could really root for the characters, even though they were really bad people, kind of like a Seinfeld-ish type show, right? Or even Sunny in Philadelphia, except for a little bit more based in reality. Now that they're on the 4th season, these people have done so much damage to each other that it's really hard to root for anybody. It's so cringe-inducing that you're kind of like watching the show from behind your hand, peeking out between your fingers. That being said, I still like the show a lot. The characters are really great, and the actors, the 2 leads, Chris Greer and Aya Cash, are really, really great. So have you guys heard about this at all, or know anything else about it?
Isn't it an MTV show?
No, okay, yeah, actually. It's FXX. So it started off on FX, and then at some point, FXX happened, and they moved it over to that channel. I've only really watched it on Hulu, so...
What's it about?
So it's about these 2 damaged people that meet and proceed to have a relationship.
Well, in what way is damaged?
Damaged, like unwilling or to accept love or give love, and drinking a lot and drugs, just their own neuroses, can't get past their own families and
Gotcha.
Deal with each other. Yeah. So it's really good. I think she has depression that she has to deal with and take medicine and go to the therapist and stuff like that. Eventually, at some point, like when you don't know the characters that well, they're fun to hang around, right? But then once you get into the 4th season, you're just like, oh, they're gonna hurt each other again,
They wear on you as much as they wear on probably
each
other
other.
people in their lives and each other, yeah.
Right. And I'm going to stick through. I just, starting the 4th season, I wanted to see if there's going to be a 5th season. And it's going to be a 5th and final season. So I'll stick with it for the rest of the 5th season and see how it ends.
5 seasons is a good amount to call it a day after.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you're 3/5 of the way, you might as well finish.
Yeah.
That's why I finished Breaking Bad.
That's going to be
I was already
controversial.
4 seasons in and didn't need any more and didn't really care to watch anymore, but I'd already done it.
Breaking Bad. All right, moving on.
Yeah, send in all your hate mail to Justin Herring.
I thought the 4 seasons were really good, and it was a really good ending point, basically. It's not necessarily that I didn't like it. I was happy at the closure, but that's another conversation. So
yeah, so that was what I've been watching this week. Mike, what have you been up to?
All right, so this week I actually watched a couple movies, one of which I saw a very long time ago, but just rewatched again because this particular movie I like to rewatch every few years because it's so good, and that movie is L.A. Confidential.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah, from 1997. Yeah. This movie has like everybody in it. This movie holds up fully, through and through. Russell Crowe, Guy Pearce, Kevin Spacey, they're all great in this movie. It's kind of sad knowing Kevin Spacey has fallen from grace in between my rewatches of this movie. So this time it had a kind of a different feel to it, but still he was he was good. Kevin Spacey, he's a good actor. So it's a shame we probably won't get much more of that going forward, you know?
Yeah, it's a shame that he caused that too, right?
Yeah, no, it's like basically it's a shame that he brought that upon himself and that gave society no choice but to do that to him. But still, watching L.A. Confidential reminded me of how great he is and how great he once was, you know, and how big of a star he once was, especially in the late 90s.
Yeah.
I watched this probably about a year and a half ago. I've been trying to get my girlfriend to watch it because I know she'll like it because she likes that sort of old Hollywood sort of stuff, and she likes all of the actors who are in it, and I knew she'd like it, so she finally gave in and watched it, and she loved it, and that was my first time to see it in probably 6 years or so, and you're right, it's just as good as ever, if not better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so good, and the writing is top-notch. It's based on the James Ellroy novel. Anyways, it's one of my favorite 90s films from when my love of films began. And maybe just one of my favorite films, period, you know?
Yeah. Do you think it's Russell Crowe's best movie?
Yeah, I do. To be honest with you.
I think so, too.
I like Master and Commander, but I haven't seen it in a very long time. My dad would tell you it's Cinderella Man, which is good. Something else. And Guy Pearce, I don't know if Guy Pearce has ever been as good as he's been in this movie. But Guy Pearce is good frequently, you know? But, just everyone is so on fire in this movie.
Even Danny DeVito and James Cromwell.
Yeah, that's back when Danny DeVito was still doing the occasional dramatic performance, which I miss.
Not just being weird as crap and It's Always Sunny.
Yeah, but hey, man, that's easy money.
And it's really enjoyable, at least for me.
Yeah, It's Always Sunny is always enjoyable in small chunks. I can only take so much of them, and then I have to watch something else.
Yeah, it's a show that I enjoy when my friends are watching.
Yeah.
But it's never something that, like, I laugh out loud at, really. So it's just kind of one of those things that I enjoy when it's on, but I never seek out. It feels like Arrested Development, where everyone's meaner to each other, and most of the scenes result in yelling at the end.
Yeah.
But anyway, L.A. Confidential. If you haven't seen it in a while, see it. If you haven't seen it at all, see it. It's one of the best examples of, like, top-notch writing, actors flying on all cylinders, and just one of the best 90s movies that still holds up. And
who's the woman that's in it?
Kim Basinger.
Kim Basinger? Yeah. She's really good in it, and she's like really stunning in it. I don't know if it's a spoiler to say that they dress her up like Veronica Lake. Is it Veronica Lake that she is?
I believe so.
But she just has this very like beautiful old Hollywood actress look to her. So it's always interesting to me when they do that to modern actresses for films like this and in The Aviator and, you know, other movies.
Yeah, like period pieces. You can kind of see what they would have looked like back in that time period. Yeah, that's always fun. I agree.
Yeah, this is definitely, I think, her best movie out of the ones I've seen of hers. Her best performance, too. Did she win an Oscar for this one?
Yes, she did win an Oscar for this, Chris.
Thank you.
Good for her.
We definitely didn't stop and pause and Google that and pick back up.
Yeah. So again, that is L.A. Confidential. I watched it on Blu-ray, but you could probably find it somewhere. It's wonderful. Watch it. It's great. the other thing I wanted to mention was Personal Shopper, which is a film from 2016, which is a film by Olivier Assayas, I believe is how you say his name.
I think that's right.
Yeah, it stars Kristen Stewart. It's a very well-received performance of hers that I see mentioned all the time, which is why it's been on my radar. Because I haven't really gotten on board with this whole Kristen Stewart post-Twilight bandwagon that everyone's on, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that she's a bad actress.
Right, exactly. So this is the first one that I wanted to see to kind of show me what she was made of. Plus, I like Olivier Assayas. I like Carlos when it came out, and Summer Hours.
Mm-hmm. Summer Hours is really good.
Yeah, I think I haven't seen much more than that, but I really enjoyed both of those, especially Summer Hours. So this is about a girl who works as a personal shopper while living in Paris, and she's also looking to get in contact with the spirit of her dead brother, who died about 6 months earlier. So she's kind of a medium, I guess is what it's called, right? People who communicate with spirits.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed this movie, but I don't think I loved it like everyone else did. I know it's in the Criterion collection, but so are a lot of Olivier Assayas' movies. But go on.
I was just going to ask what you thought of Kristen Stewart's performance, because I hear raves about her in this movie.
Yeah, so that's what I was looking forward to the most, right? And what I would say is I think Kristen Stewart is clearly, without a doubt, better in this than she was in Twilight or anything that I've seen her in before that, like Into the Wild, Zathura, The Runaways, etc. But she's still a little too stuttery, I guess is the right word. Like, one of her go-to moves is to, like, touch her hair or her ears and break eye contact and kind of stutter. And she still does that here all the time. And it's not, I guess it may not be a bad acting thing, but it's a Kristen Stewart thing.
It's a crutch that she has.
Right. And I am seeing it all over the place. So while it's a good performance, I don't know that it never didn't feel like me watching her try to act really well, if that makes sense. Like, I felt like I was watching her working.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. I do believe that she's had some other rave reviews on her acting post that movie even.
She has, actually, yeah. So, and she's even got cast as a Charlie's Angel.
Oh, yeah.
Which sounds like a really dull Charlie's Angel to me. But,
yeah.
But, you know what? I'm still on board. Like I said, I liked the movie, I didn't dislike her in it. But, I don't know. It still feels very Kristen Stewart-y. But then again, I don't know that that's a bad thing. Like, if a Robert Downey Jr. feels too much like Robert Downey Jr., is that bad?
Yeah, maybe it's things that you noticed in Twilight that didn't feel good, and that the movie, because it was so bad, accentuated in her performance and made her look even worse than she actually is, that you just continue to notice them into her good performances, perhaps. I'll have to watch it. I'm really interested in
I would be
it.
actually really curious to see your thoughts. That said, I think the movie is really interesting. It goes places I didn't think it would go. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I'm definitely going to watch it again one day. So as it sits now, it's good. I don't know that it's great, and Kristen Stewart is still in my we'll see category.
Yeah. So let me ask you, since we're on the subject of Twilight, has Robert Pattinson gotten himself out of the Twilight jail?
Oh, yes. Yes. Between Good Time, Lost City of Z, that Cosmopolis movie with Dick Cronenberg did.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I've seen more interesting Robert Pattinson performances than I've seen Twilight Robert Pattinson performances, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen more ranges from him than I have Kristen Stewart. Because it seems like everything I've seen her in post-Twilight has been, sort of troubled girl.
Troubled girl who doesn't like to make eye contact and plays with her hair.
Right. Right. And I've seen other things from Robert Pattinson that really break the Twilight mold. Whereas Twilight, she was also, troubled girl, but just also in a bad movie, right? And I think with her...
6 bad movies.
Oh, yeah. There were 6
was
of those,
it
right?
6 movies?
Was it 5?
Or 5. I don't know. Whatever.
I think it's 5.
Geez,
Let's move
that's
on.
Way
There
too
were
many. Yeah.
Yeah, because there were 4 books, I think. And then there were 3 movies. And then the last book was a 2-parter. So I think it was 5.
Okay. That sounds right.
This has been your Twilight catch-up.
Sure. Yeah. But the only movies that I can think of that I didn't like her in were also movies that I just didn't like and were bad movies, right? Like everything else that, that she's in that I think she's okay in was just okay. Things that I think she was good in were good movies. So I think she's maybe not quite one to carry a movie on her own, but if it's already good, she's good.
I think it's one of those things where for the right role, she's really great, but that's not going to be every role. You know what I mean? Like she's not Juliette Binoche, or she's not Meryl Streep or Kate Blanchett. You know what I mean? Like she can't, at least as far as I've seen, she can't transform to be a character. Like, so you have to cast her according to the character, I guess is kind of what I would say.
Yeah, I'm not sure she's found that role yet. Like, I think that's still maybe out there that's going to like be undeniably great. And she's maybe going to get nominated for an Oscar. I think that's still to come for her.
Yeah, I think she's got greatness in her future for sure, because people seem to like her and she's got a presence about her, which sometimes is all you need. Like, she looks good on camera. You know what I mean? Like, you like watching her. So she's got that going for her. And that can take you far. So anyway, that's all I've got for my What's on Our Minds segment. Justin, what do you got this week?
All right, so this week I have quite a bit, or at least compared to normal, I think. So I'm going to try to go through them a little fast here. But first thing, I went to see Mission Impossible Fallout again. But this time I went to go to like a real IMAX, like floor to ceiling screen, not just like a large theater IMAX.
Sweet, a proper IMAX.
Yeah.
There aren't too many of those in the world.
No, there's not. But there is one like 3 minutes from my house.
Ugh. Wow. Why don't you go there
it's
all
really
the time?
Close.
Why didn't you go there the first time you saw Mission Impossible Fallout?
Because the last few times I've gone to that theater to see a movie, I have had people talk and be bad audience members in it. And my girlfriend and I were so excited about Fallout that we didn't want it to be ruined by someone talking like the last couple have been. And they've also opened up a brand new Alamo Draft House about 30 minutes from where I live.
Oh, sweet.
And so we wanted to do Fallout with the Alamo Draft House, nobody can talk or they'll get kicked out experience, so we could fully focus and enjoy the movie, right?
You made the right decision.
Yeah. I don't feel bad for Justin at all. He lives 3 minutes from an IMAX and about 30 minutes from an Alamo Draft House. He's a pretty lucky guy.
And here I am going to an AMC.
Yeah.
So I went to the IMAX to see, the spectacle that, they were touting about the Fallout action scenes in IMAX. And it was like $19 a ticket.
Oh,
which
man.
Was a lot. I didn't know that, but I was already there and committed to doing it. So I did it. And I got to say, for $19 a ticket, I'm pretty disappointed because there are only 2 scenes in the movie that actually take advantage of the full IMAX. Like they go floor to ceiling.
Yeah,
right?
That's a bummer.
I don't think it's a spoiler alert, but I guess if you really don't want to hear anything, like skip ahead like 30 seconds, but it's the skydiving scene and the helicopter scene. Those are the 2 that are in IMAX. Everything else, it's just like watching a big theater screen, like an above average sized screen, which is cool, but not $19 cool. Right. Like I was hoping there would be a lot more IMAX.
How much was yours, Mike?
Well, mine wasn't like floor to ceiling IMAX. Mine was just like IMAX at a AMC.
FOMAX.
Yeah, that most people have access to. So I think it was about $15 to $18, something like that. So yeah.
But that being said, the scenes that were in IMAX looked really great. They were the best looking things in the whole movie.
I bet.
And were super fun to watch, and that added that extra level of tension that you definitely can't get in a regular size theater.
Yeah. Was it as awesome as the Ghost Protocol IMAX sequences?
I don't think so. I don't think they played with your feelings while watching it as much. Like it give you that vertigo, that dizziness or whatever.
Yeah, Brad Bird really played with the depth of field a lot.
They didn't do that nearly as much in this one with like there's moments in the helicopter scenes where they're following a helicopter and it's flying around fast and you pass by a mountain and you're like, whoa, and you see over the edge, but there's not as much. I don't remember it impacting me as much as Ghost Protocol did, or even I saw Gravity when it came out at this IMAX too.
Sure.
And
just from a
Gravity was
sheer
a little
visual
more
standpoint, I get you mean.
Still a good movie, regardless. I'll say that. And the other thing, before I move out of Fallout, you have to pick your seats when you go in, and they assign you seats, and you have a row and a seat number. And my seat that I ended up picking ended up being G14, which, as tends to happen, it made me immediately think of a film called Rush Hour, where they trick Chris Tucker by telling him his assignment is G14 classified. So I put out on Twitter, I said, if anyone knows what G14 classified is from, I'll give you a shout out on the show. And the first correct response was from @StrictlyTalking, which is a podcast called Strictly Talking. So congrats, guys, on knowing your Rush Hour. I'm glad to know there's other people out there like me.
Not quite like you, Justin.
Well, close enough. I'm glad to know that someone aspires to be like me.
Yeah, one
Congratulations all.
So yeah, way to go, guys. They were the first to respond. So here's your shout out. You guys are awesome.
All right. What's next on your What's on Our Mind?
Yeah. So next is just a film that I absolutely love, and I've seen many, many, many times, but I decided to watch it again with my girlfriend, who's on a Tom Cruise kick right now. We also watched Edge of Tomorrow this week in our Tom Cruise, I guess, fest that we're having in celebration of Fallout. But the one that I want to talk about is we watched Magnolia, which
nice.
I know you guys have both seen. I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this have seen, but if you haven't seen it, it's the 1999 film directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, and it has a ton of people in it, Tom Cruise being one of them. It's really great. It's one of my favorite films. It's one of my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson movies. And I got to say, it's still just as good as it ever has been, and it just gets better every time. And it has like a 3-hour runtime, I think maybe slightly over 3 hours.
Yeah.
But it could be 2 more hours as far as I'm concerned. Like I never get bored. No matter, I could watch it, tomorrow again, and I wouldn't be bored.
Yeah, I watched it with my girlfriend when Phantom Thread had just come out, and I was on a PTA kick. I watched Punch Drunk Love, and I watched Magnolia. And yeah, I agree. This movie still holds up. This is my favorite Tom Cruise performance.
Yeah, that's what I was about
Frank
to ask.
T.J. Mackey. He is just this damaged soul in this movie.
Yeah.
And he is so good, and he rises to the challenge. And in my opinion, he gets not nearly enough credit for this. And
he gets some hate for it a little bit too, which surprises me.
Yeah, and you know what? Now we don't get any more Tom Cruise going out on a limb performances, or at least we haven't in a couple years.
Yeah. Unless it's a literal limb for an action scene.
Yeah, unless it's
Mission
the one that puts
Impossible.
his body in physical danger.
Yeah,
And-
where he could actually die.
Yeah, and you know what? I think he was pretty good in this movie, and I'll stand by that.
Oh, absolutely. I don't understand. I haven't heard about the hate. He gets hate for this movie?
I've heard people say that he's bad in the scene where he, I guess, spoiler alert for Magnolia, he confronts his dad or goes to visit his dad as he's in the bed, and he's, as a character, refusing to cry for his dad because he has a lot of hatred towards him, but
Right.
he is sad, so like he's crying regardless of all his attempts to not cry. So it's a very strange and like
Complicated.
complicated cry that I don't think we're used to seeing on the screen. And I've heard people give him shit for that, saying that it's like way overacted.
Oh, well, I don't remember that. Yeah, this is definitely one of my
That's kind of the
favorite.
essence of Tom Cruise, though. Like, when he gets emotional, a lot of people, myself included, sometimes say he overacts. But I would say this is not one of those times. I think this is just one of those times where he's doing something that really goes out there. And in my opinion, from what I've seen, I think most people, at least nowadays, do acknowledge this as one of his best performances. But certainly at the time, I don't think they did. But like film Twitter and people I've talked to, I think they really like this performance by Tom Cruise, especially in retrospect, given a career where he otherwise didn't do a lot of stuff like this, you know? Maybe that's just me being wrong. I don't know. If you guys have opinions on Tom Cruise, let me know in this movie specifically.
So last thing, and I don't have much to say about this one because it's only part of a bigger movie that I've watched, but my New Year's resolution to watch the Decalogue by Krzysztof Kieslowski began last night as I watched the first part of the Decalogue, which is part 1 of 10. And it's really great. I can't wait to watch the rest. But if anybody's like a longtime listener and paid attention to those New Year's resolutions, I have started. And
What commandment
really
is it
I want
on?
to know. It's thou shalt not have any God before me.
Okay.
It's longer and wordier than that, the actual commandment, and probably more eloquent than I put it. But
yeah, I watched like 3 or 4 of them a long time ago in college, and I don't exactly remember which ones. I think I watched the murder one and then the one that you watched last night, but I'd have to watch them again. They're good. Yeah, they're really good.
It's absolutely beautiful. They were made for TV, so they're 4:3 Academy format, like the square, like First Reformed was.
Mm-hmm.
It still looks just as good as any of his widescreen films. I'm a big fan of the way his films look. They're all beautiful and perfectly shot, I think. This one, it feels a little maybe predictable by the end, but I don't think that matters. I don't think the point is to surprise you or shock you. I think it's okay that you see it coming. It might even be intentional. It's great. I'm probably going to watch the second one, maybe the third one tonight if I have time.
Cool.
Yeah, I've still never seen any of them, so I'm jealous.
Well, you should watch them. You've seen other Kieslowski stuff, right?
Yeah, I've seen The Three Colors and The Double Life of Veronique.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be it. But yeah, no, I've seen some stuff, and I've always wanted to see the Decalogue, but it's hard to put a 10-hour commitment at the top of your list, you know?
Yeah.
It is. It's kind of a good thing that they're broken up into 10 one-hour parts, right? Because you can... It's like watching, a season of Westworld, basically.
Yeah, except for they're not necessarily continued.
No.
So you can watch, they're like little shorts, essentially. They're hour-long shorts, so you can watch one here and one there, and there's not any continuation from
Right. In terms of a time commitment, it's,
it's
similar to committing to a season of Westworld or some other 10-hour TV show season. Cool. But yeah, so that's it for me. What's on our minds? So we can move on into 8th grade if you guys want.
Yep.
All right, here we go.
I said one more week of 8th grade, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, huh? Okay, so growing up can be a little bit scary and weird.
We will begin to explore these changing bodies of yours. It's gonna be lit.
Don't hold back, I wanna break free.
As always, make sure to share and subscribe to my channel. Gucci!
I think you're so cool. Maybe you just need to put yourself out there a little.
I'm gonna stop eating with you if you keep doing
You said I could say one thing.
I'm really, nervous all the time. I try really hard not to feel that way. But you just need to face your fears and let people know the real you.
As always, before we get started on 8th grade, just want to let you know that we will be spoiler-free for the next little while. We won't be giving any spoilers for the film, so if you haven't seen it yet, you can listen ahead. We'll give you a spoiler warning, so you can stop listening, go see the film, and then come back and finish the episode.
All right, so 8th grade was written and directed by Bo Burnham, and it's starring Elsie Fisher. The IMDb synopsis says, an introverted girl tries to survive the last week of her disastrous 8th grade year before leaving to start high school.
Yeah, pretty good synopsis, I think. A little hyperbolic, in my opinion, saying that she's trying to survive a disastrous 8th grade year. I don't know that I would necessarily agree with that, although some people may. I think it's kind of up
that
to
sounds
you.
like my
I imagine
8th
she
grade year.
might call it disastrous, but someone in our situation might just call it 8th grade year.
Yeah, that's true. It is all about perspective. So
yeah. So with that, do we want to move into our expectations for the film?
Yeah, let's go.
Absolutely.
All right. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, rare, but I will.
Gasp.
Yeah. So the reason that I'll go first is because I had this film on my most anticipated films of the summer when we did that episode a while back. So longtime listeners will know that I was very excited about this film and that I greatly anticipated it. And people who just listened to me saying it was on my most anticipated will probably figure that out too. But that I really was excited about the film. I heard really good things from when it debuted. I think at South by Southwest, there were people that came out and raved about the film and said, Bo Burnham made this film about an 8th grade girl. It's called 8th grade. It's great. See it as soon as you get the chance. So that's kind of where I was. I saw the trailer, thought it still looked as good as everyone said. It didn't disappoint me. So I've been excited. This has definitely been, I can't remember if it was my number 1 most anticipated, but it certainly feels like it now.
Yeah.
Like once it came out, I was like, finally.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I was going in. Very excited.
Cool. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, so I'm a lot like Justin here. I heard a lot of buzz about it. I was very interested to see what Bo Burnham would do with a movie about an 8th grade girl. I was very curious about that. Yeah, so I was just excited and hopeful about getting another great film. So yeah, what about you, Mike?
I only really knew of Bo Burnham through word of mouth. I'm not really someone who will watch stand-up comedy on his own. The only thing I really knew about it was the trailer and then the word of mouth, like Justin said, that came out after it premiered. And I had always heard good things about Bo Burnham, but this is my first time ever really paying attention to him one way or the other. So I wanted it to be good because it looked good, and yeah, that's about as far as it went for me.
What was your experience with Bo Burnham, Justin? Have you seen any of his stand-up or anything like that?
I had no experience with him at all as a stand-up comedian prior to hearing about this movie anyways. The one thing that I had seen him in was a very, very small role that he had in one, maybe 2 episodes of Parks and Rec, where he plays like a kind of an asshole country singer.
Oh, yeah.
Which was funny to me because Parks and Rec in general was funny. And so I liked him from that, but I never saw any of his stand-up. Like Mike, I don't really watch stand-up. I'll occasionally listen to it in the car if I don't have like a good podcast or a song I'm feeling or something, but that's pretty rare. So I had never really heard any of his stand-up. So I don't know. I didn't have any expectations as to what his humor might be like going into the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of a bit of a blank slate.
Yeah, I guess I've had just a tad bit more experience. I had a friend that kind of tried to show it to me, and I wasn't particularly interested because stand-up comedy like you guys doesn't necessarily hold my attention that well. But after watching this movie, I think I might go back and just try one of his stand-up routines and see what I think.
What I understood was that he was sort of a comedy songwriter,
mm-hmm.
right? Like he would write silly songs. Outside of Weird Al Yankovic, I don't think that I can say I've ever really been interested in people who write silly songs. Maybe Flight of the Conchords when they had their show.
Flight of the Conchords is great.
But it's usually a passing novelty.
Right. That's true, though, yeah.
So on that note, did anyone want to go into what they thought about the movie?
So overall, just to be really simple about it, I really, really enjoyed this movie. I'm not totally sure if I loved it yet. I think I'm going to go see it again later this week and then let it sit for a while. But I really, really enjoyed it from start to finish. Like there weren't very many, if any, sour notes or times that I wasn't enjoying it. I will say I did see it with you, Mike. So we saw it together. So I kind of,
it's true.
You know my reaction. I laughed plenty out loud.
Yeah. I heard it.
As did a lot of the theater, I think. I won't say what you did. I'll leave that up for your thoughts so I don't spoil this.
Yeah. I either laugh or I just really loudly boo when I'm not enjoying it. And everyone else is laughing.
Yeah. So I think it's a super simple plot. It's very much a slice of life. There's nothing overly melodramatic in it. Even things that they could get very melodramatic about, they tend to not or skip over it and keep it very grounded and very honest and real, which is something I like in a movie. Not necessarily every movie. As I enjoyed Mission Impossible Fallout, which isn't that grounded and real, but
what?
Yeah, you take that back, sir.
But
get out of here with that.
But some of my favorite movies tend to be, that sort of thing. I think there's a awesome use of music in it. I think Elsie Fisher is really great in it. It's really confidently shot. It doesn't totally feel like a first-time film from a filmmaker to me. It feels a lot more confident in its jokes and its tone. And I've got more to say, but that's it for me for now.
Yeah, 8th Grade, out of the movies we've seen, probably has the most similar to me with Hereditary, because my stomach was in knots for this whole movie. Just this ball of anxiety inside my stomach.
Expand on that, please.
Well, okay. So, for instance, the whole thing is tense and full of. Well, let me just give my brief overviews, and I'm sure we'll go into it more. But I felt very anxious during this film. Let's just put it that way. And Bo Burnham, for this being his first, I don't know if this is his first time to write a film, but I know it's his first time to direct a film, and I think that's phenomenal. It's really, really great. We have had a slew of first-time directors this year, and they've all been really good and surprisingly good. So yeah, Bo Burnham, I think it's a great accomplishment of his. He really nails, I'm going to go back to the anxiety, but the anxiety, and it was very personal to me. I had the same kind of experiences in freshman and sophomore year. Elsie Fisher does an amazing job embodying that anxiety and that awkwardness of her youth. I'm curious to know how much of that is performance and how much of that is actually her. I haven't seen any interviews with her to know exactly.
So I read something on her, there was like an interview with Bo Burnham where he was talking about Elsie Fisher and contributions she made to the film. I know in the original script, he had all of the 8th grade girls and stuff. They were all communicating and talking through Facebook and doing their social media on Facebook. And when Elsie read the script, she said, nobody uses Facebook. So she caused him to change it all to like Instagram and update like the social media platform to be more current with the times. And then he also, that line is in the movie.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of input from her. And I know that they use like real 8th graders. Like all the kids in the movie were real 8th graders. Some of them from like the school that they shot in. She had just graduated 8th grade and they started shooting like a week later.
Yeah, that's something that's really great about this film too, is a lot of times, you cast up. The age is much higher than the actual characters. But all these kids look like they're in 8th grade. They look authentic, and it really helps the film, I think. But one last thing before I move on to Mike, but I just wanted to call out the father in this. I thought the father did a really great job of portraying that role as a dad, the goofy dad trying to do what's best for his daughter, but constantly being confused by what his daughter wants and needs. And I thought he was really good in this.
Yeah, that's Josh Hamilton, by the way.
So, yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. What did you think, Mike?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I think Elsie Fisher is terrific in this movie, and I hope her career takes off to a million wonderful places. This feels like an authentic public school experience, at least to me, based on my experience. I imagine if you were a quiet kid, like Kayla is in this movie, which at this age I felt like I was, then you will really respond to this movie. It perfectly captures that idea of not having yourself figured out yet, of just wanting to have a peer take any amount of interest in you, but at the same time, not really having anything to say because you're not sure who you are yet.
Yeah.
So she's at that age where some students are growing up really fast, while some are still just little kids. And right now, her biggest anxiety is just having someone know her name while also trying to find out how to be a functioning adult. There are times that can be very harrowing to watch.
Yeah, I think when you're young and you don't know who you are yet, a lot of your value and what you consider yourself to be is based on other people and what they think of you, right?
Yeah, and what you perceive to be successful about them, Mm-hmm. With her, it's social media. It's a lot of what's going on. So anyway, we can get into that in a minute. But basically, it's just about a girl who's trying to figure out how to be the person she wants to be. She's giving advice on the internet about how to be the person she wants to be, but doesn't know how to follow that advice herself. It's really great. It rings true. Yeah, I think authentic is the best word I can describe this movie as. It just feels authentic.
Yeah, I think, maybe caveat by saying that none of us were 8th grade girls ever, so we could be totally wrong
sure.
about what the experience of an 8th grade girl is like, but it doesn't feel false. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel written at any point in this movie. It all feels like it's almost pulled directly out of like actual experiences.
And what I would say is there's a lot that I identify with, or that I remember from my own, that I identify with her with. Except for a couple of scenes, but yeah, it rings true to me, and the way I felt, if that makes sense.
But even some of the scenes we'll talk about in spoilers later, I think even those scenes aren't necessarily gender specific.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, there are a lot of scenes in this movie that are just straight up a young person's state of mind. Boy or girl, they all think about the same stuff when they're teenagers. You know, they think about fitting in. They think about wanting to be attractive. They think about wanting to seem older than they are and more mature than they are. They just handle it different ways. And anyway, caveat aside, you know, like you said, we are not and never were 8th grade girls. But that said, I think this is written and directed by Bo Burnham, and he made a movie that everyone should be able to identify with.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing, is that there's plenty going on that isn't 8th grade specific, that's like underneath the surface, right? That, you know, even now I can think of and apply to either my life or like people I know, their life. You know, I can think about it in those contexts, and those people aren't 8th grade girls, because I don't think I know any 8th grade girls. Like all my cousins and everybody are all much older than that. So yeah, I don't have anybody like specific to like think about like my cousin or my niece or anything like that I know who's in 8th grade, but there are actual lessons that I can apply to my own life and others that I know that are much older, right?
Exactly. So,
right.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's supposed to be there for, right? Is if you can apply it to your own experiences and your own memories of being an 8th grader, you can remember a lot of the anxieties that she is feeling, a lot of the confusion that she's feeling. You remember waking up and being like, what can I do to be like cooler in front of my peers right now? You know what I mean? Like we didn't have social media back whenever we were in 8th grade, but we had social media when we were in high school, and it was not too dissimilar from that, or at least Justin and I did.
Yeah. Let's not talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not nearly to the level that it was now. Like I remember
definitely not
having AOL Instant Messenger was kind of the thing. And you actually
it was
just,
MySpace
kind of just
and Facebook in those days.
One-on-one conversation. Well, for me during high school, it was AOL Instant Messenger for a while, and then MySpace came like my senior year towards the end of it. And then afterwards, when MySpace blew up, and then shortly thereafter, like Facebook kind of overtook it.
Yeah, what grade were you guys in when you got Snapchat?
Yeah.
20th?
Yeah.
I don't know, 20. And for like a day until I didn't realize what Snapchat was, and was like, I have no interest in doing this.
But anyways,
we've talked about how real the film is and how much we can relate to it and how much anxiety there is in it. But I also want to say, like, this film is funny. Like, I think it's really funny. There are places where it's not, but I would say I laughed in this more than I did in something like Tag.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. This is a really funny movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I laughed multiple times throughout the movie, which I'm sure you heard because we laughed at the same time quite frequently.
I realized watching that how similar our senses of humor are.
Yeah, I agree. It felt like we were laughing through the majority of the movie, and then by the end of it, we convinced some of the people behind us to laugh a little bit too, because that guy was being really quiet the whole time until like the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, well, it's certainly, there's so much awkwardness in this movie that it I think takes a minute to adjust yourself to the amount of awkwardness and not just like feel awkward along with the movie.
Yeah, which you do, but it's never like, okay, so I'm going to touch on the anxiety aspect of it. I think this movie does have a lot of anxiety in it, but in my opinion, only in a couple places. For the most part, anxiety was not what I was feeling. There's one scene in particular, but for the most part, it was mainly just empathy. And yeah, just empathy, really. Because a lot of times, Kayla is put in a situation where she is really anxious. And I think you're supposed to be anxious with her. But the movie seems so sweet most of the time that I always got the impression that she's anxious because it's important to her. Although, as an adult, I realize this is not a big deal and she'll figure it out eventually, probably. So, for the most part, I wasn't anxious. I was just enjoying watching her growing pains, I guess, you know? Because I found them to be humorous a lot of the times.
And I did find it to be humorous quite a bit. Yeah, I guess mainly my anxiousness, I think we're going to have to talk about in spoilers so we can be a little bit more specific about it. But I think this movie is really genuinely funny, and but yeah, I was very anxious throughout this film.
Well, I think anxiety is obviously a very big part of the movie and a big part of the character. I think that as an audience, we're not necessarily supposed to be in the mind of Elsie Fisher's character, Kayla. I don't think we're supposed to be in her mind except for select moments when Bo Burnham wants us to be, to kind of understand and get in there. But then we're back, I think, out and kind of looking at it a little more omnisciently, right?
A lot of it's from her dad's perspective too.
Definitely. So it has both. I think it's both of what you're saying for Chris, and feeling that anxiety. Like I had some of that, but only in select moments. And then the rest of the time I'm with you, Mike, where I was just watching and kind of enjoying watching her go through things and learn and grow and basically struggle, because really in those moments in life, you're panicked, you're worried, you think it's the end of the world, but we all have the experience to know that everything's going to be okay, and everything's going to be okay for her with what she's dealing with for most of the movie, right? I think it's if you're listening to this and wondering if this is going to be like a big anxiety attack and like take you back to your 8th grade days when you were an anxious kid and hated it, and you're going to be drawn back to that time and experience the misery, I don't think this film will do that.
Yeah, she's not bullied like Carrie, or, she's not stuffed in lockers. No one's like, she doesn't go home crying every day. This isn't a depressing movie. This is a very sweet movie, I think. Yeah. First and foremost.
Yeah. In the end, I left with a very heartwarming feeling, but not in a sappy way.
Yeah, it's very moving.
You're right. There's no bullying or anything, but it's social pressure. The social pressure that happens in this movie. Yeah, I felt very strongly as a child as well, and so to me, that's where I.
We'll talk more in specifics, because I feel like I don't also want to undersell the anxiety that is meant to feel in some scenes. So, do you want to give our overall recommends or don't recommends, and then move to spoilers?
Real quick, there's one thing I did want to talk about while we're on like the social anxiety and that stuff in the movie. I wanted to talk about Bo Burnham a little bit, if you guys will indulge me.
Go for it.
That's why we started a podcast.
To indulge each other? Yeah. To indulge me specifically?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I feel so lucky to have
Happy birthday,
Tell
Justin.
us about the World Cup some more.
Oh, Croatia, come on. Anyways. So Bo Burnham, as we talked before, he did like stand-up comedy. He did kind of silly songs. Well, this was probably 4 or 5 months ago. I was scrolling through Facebook or something, and someone posted a YouTube clip of a Bo Burnham stand-up special that's like on Netflix. And it was basically saying that in this clip, Bo Burnham talks so much about things I feel as a introvert and as someone who suffers from anxiety. He says so much in this clip that means a lot to me. So I watched the clip, and it's basically him making fun of Kanye West, who apparently in a concert that he saw does like an auto-tune speaking thing where he's talking about things he has issues with, but his voice is auto-tuned, and it's very silly. And so Bo Burnham starts to do this. He complains about like, my hand can't fit inside a Pringles can. And then he complains about putting too much in his Chipotle burrito, and then it breaks apart. But then he kind of goes on to talk about his anxieties on stage and his pressure he feels to perform, and like wanting to make the audience happy and needing to make them happy to feel validated, and how he kind of hates his audience as much as he loves them. And I think having watched that clip and knowing that about Bo Burnham as a person, that he feels that way. And this was actually, I believe, his last like stand-up special that he did that song in. Like he stopped performing on stage live, at least for a while. And part of that was to go and make 8th grade. But part of that, I think he was dealing with a lot of social anxiety. But knowing that about him tells you a lot about the message and the themes and the things that he's trying to get across in this movie. I showed the link to you guys. Have you guys watched this performance of his?
Yeah, the brief 7-minute clip that you shared with us.
Yeah, I watched it right before we recorded.
Yeah, it is interesting, and it does reveal something about Bo Burnham, like you're saying.
Well, it tells you what's on his mind, right? It tells you that his is the comedy of introspection. Like, a lot of what is going to be appealing about Bo Burnham, I assume, based on this 7-minute clip that I've seen, and 8th grade, it appears like he's a very thoughtful guy, and that's what his appeal is. because the clip that I saw wasn't particularly funny, but it was interesting. And I was never bored or never not enjoying it, because it was very obvious he was building towards something. And at the end of it, the last verse of his little like song that he's doing is about his anxieties and his depression and, you know, why he feels like he does this and et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, it's just inherently, I find that to be very interesting. And I think if you are a fan of Bo Burnham, it's probably because you find that kind of stuff interesting as well. It lends itself very well to this kind of movie because he seems like he's probably a very empathetic guy. And I think to be a director, and especially someone who wants to write and direct movies like this, you have to be in touch with that inner anxiety and what it's like to be scared, you know? And I'm sure that's why he wanted to write a movie about an 8th grader, you know? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, ultimately I find, based on that clip alone, the transition to 8th grade seems very clear.
Yeah, I think it does. And that's definitely why I wanted to bring it up. The clip is called Can't Handle This on YouTube. I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes. I think if you like this movie and, you know, I think want to learn a little bit about more about like where it's coming from and Bo Burnham, I think it's a really interesting clip to watch.
Agreed.
Oh, yeah.
So I would definitely recommend going to see this movie. I don't necessarily think you need to see it at the movie theater, other than to support movies like this at the movie theater. It's worth it. And I think actually A24 is doing a thing where they are renting out a movie theater in every state in the United States, and they are going to show it for free and not enforce the RMPA rating so that younger people can go see this, because I think it's important for kids to know that they are not alone and that other people feel the way they do. So yeah, take your kids to go see this is what I would say. How about you, Justin?
Same. Go see it. It doesn't demand to be seen in theaters, but it should be seen in theaters because first-time directors and films like this that are indie films, and, you know, people were very skeptical about giving it a chance, and it going nationwide to theaters. Like, we should repay the A24 for taking the chance on films like this and supporting independent first-time filmmakers and putting their movies out there. So you should definitely see it in theaters.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo their thoughts. See it in theaters. It's great. It deserves your money. It's not making a whole lot of money right now, which is a shame. So, you know, see it as soon as you can.
Yeah, so Mike, we got a question on Twitter about 8th grade, kind of. Do you want to read it?
At MM and Oscar, which is Mike, and Oscar podcast, they sent in a question, which is kind of a segment I guess they like to do on their show, but they wanted to share it with us. So if you think this is fun, check out their show and their podcast. So, are you guys familiar with the game that kids play, Kill, Marry, Screw? I guess is the PG version of it.
I'm familiar with it.
You get a list of, I think it's usually 3 people, I guess, and you have to kill one, marry one, and screw the other.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly, yeah. And you can't double up on anything. You have to assign one person to each category, no exceptions.
Gotcha.
So they do the same thing with movies. They thought it would be fun to do the same thing with 8th grade. The question, instead of kill, marry, screw, would be see, buy, or skip it. Okay?
Okay.
So the movies they gave us to choose from are 8th grade, Lady Bird, and Dead Poets Society. See, buy, or skip. Which is which? All right. I'm calling you out right now. Chris, go.
All right. So I'm going to see 8th grade, buy Lady Bird, and skip Dead Poets Society. And the reason being, I think I liked Lady Bird just a touch more than 8th grade. A little bit maybe of recency bias, and I've seen Dead Poets Society so much already that I just kind of like those other 2 movies a little bit better, and they're not as sappy as Dead Poets Society. Like Justin always likes to say, slice of life. So yeah, that's why I say skip Dead Poets Society, even though I like that movie. But yeah, those are my reasons. What about you, Mike? Go.
Yeah, so I would say see Lady Bird, buy 8th grade, and skip Dead Poets Society. I like Lady Bird quite a bit, but 8th grade moved me so much more than Lady Bird did. I laughed more. I was more anxious, like Chris said. The whole range of emotions. It was all over the place in 8th grade. Whereas Lady Bird, just a lot of smiles, belly laughs. But I don't know if I was ever moved to tears like I was at one point in 8th grade, And anyway, as far as Dead Poets Society, I agree. It's a little sappy and sentimental, but, otherwise a pretty good movie. But between these three, you got to skip it. What about you, Justin?
All right. So I'm going to go with by 8th grade, see the Dead Poets Society, and skip Lady Bird.
What?
And let me explain. And I don't know if this is recommendations for other people or what I would do for myself. But either way, my explanation, the reason to see Dead Poets Society is because I've never seen it. And if I just skipped it...
You've never seen Dead Poets Society?
No, I haven't. So I want to see it more than I want to skip it.
Well, that makes sense. You can't argue with that logic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So and I don't know if it's fair, but I've seen Lady Bird twice, so I can skip it. But
makes sense.
I don't think that's quite how the game works, but whatever.
But there it is.
But yeah, so I kind of feel the same way as you, Mike. I really loved 8th grade. I think it's got more to glean from it, more things that make me feel connected and make me feel, less alone, more included in terms of like times where I've been anxious or, started to have a panic attack or been really introverted and quiet. And I think there's more to learn from 8th grade. And I feel like Lady Bird, I think there are lessons in it, but I think it's a bit more of a drama, a bit more about the drama of the character and less about taking something away from it and like how and affecting your life and making you want to be a different person or a better person or, change something about yourself. I didn't really get any of that from Lady Bird. So that's why I say skip it.
That said,
all right.
I like all three of those movies. So anyway, good question. Mike, and Oscar, thanks a lot for sending that in.
I love Lady Bird for the record, too. I thought it was really good. It was my favorite movie of last year. So I'm not hating on it. I'm not trying to hate on it.
Certainly safe to assume that we like all three movies, except for Justin, who has not seen Dead Poets Society and thus hates it.
That's how I fall on everything. If I haven't seen it, don't like it.
You hate it.
All right. And on that note, are we ready to move into spoilers?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
I'll tell you what. You know them cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it. And here we go.
All right, guys. Now that we're in spoilers, I guess we can talk about my anxiety and the specific moments in which I had a lot of anxiety. The pool party, for instance, is one in which I had very much a lot of anxiety. Because I think I could identify with her. There were moments as a child where I would go to a pool party, and I love the way the music, and that's something actually we haven't touched on yet either, is the music, but the way she walks up to the window, and then the music plays, and she just surveys all these kids having a great time, and she's just like, how am I going to go out there and have a good time with these kids? But to me, I remember those moments personally, and having those moments and going over to somebody's birthday party where I tangentially knew them and not getting as cool of a gift as everybody else. In fact, in my theater, a person that was like one seat away from me was like, as soon as we realized that she was going to give her a gift, she was like, oh, fuck. Like she, it's very upsetting watching that to me.
I think I definitely identify with it. I mean, I have that in moments now. Like in life, like if I go out with a friend and a bunch of their friends and people I don't necessarily know or don't have a rapport with or anything like that, I don't say anything. I will not say anything all night. I will just sit there and like listen and have those feelings. Like I definitely identify with it. I think that the anxiety in that scene is the strongest when she goes into the bathroom to change, and I think that's the moment when. Yeah, that's the moment when Bo Burnham wants you to be in that moment with her and feel what she's feeling, because there's no music in that moment. It's just her, gasping for air and breathing in a dark bathroom, like pacing back and forth. And and that, I totally agree with you. That part gives me a lot of anxiety.
And what I would say, though, is, and I totally agree also, that's one of like the two main anxiety-ridden moments in the movie. But what I would say is most of my anxiety stemmed from not knowing how she was going to react.
Like worrying she was going to do something?
Yeah,
weird?
Worrying she was going to get so anxious that she would make a fool of herself and make it worse. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's always like the fear I was experiencing more than anything in this movie, was like, she is so clueless on how to just strike up a conversation with a peer that anytime someone approached her or she approached someone, there was always a little bit of like, oh man.
A moment that had a lot of anxiety for me, and for the exact reasons that you're speaking of, is after she's been the shadow for the high school student, and they exchanged numbers, and she's going to call her. I'm like, no, please don't call her.
Just text her first. Why are you calling her?
Yeah. And then she's so excited and walking back and forth. I'm just like, oh, something. I'm just on the verge of my seat thinking something bad is going to happen throughout the whole movie. Like what you're saying, she's going to say something that's going to embarrass herself, or she's going to, just something bad is going to happen. She's going to be rejected, because those are all the fears I had as a child,
Do you guys pace around when you talk on the phone?
I'm pacing around right now.
I don't talk on the phone very often, but when I do, I cannot stand still if I'm standing.
I know what you mean with like the fear in that moment, but kind of tangentially, I was thinking of like, is this what I look like when I'm on the phone? Because it's so frantic, her pacing, and the camera is like following her the whole time, and it has to follow her pretty quickly. So like that scene is super frantic and like kinetic, right? And I started like thinking about myself. I was like, am I that nervous on the phone, or do I appear that nervous even when I'm not? So I started thinking about that, and it's making me self-conscious. I'm going to try to like sit in a chair the next time I have a phone conversation.
It's tough.
Smart.
Yeah, I won't do it. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, mainly, I guess that's, Mike really put it well. I think my anxiety is the fear that I had as a kid, and why I wouldn't talk to people, is the fear of embarrassing myself or being rejected. And that was the fear that I had for her throughout the whole movie.
Just a sidebar, I got really anxious whenever she was in the cafeteria, I guess, and she had written a letter to the popular girl.
Oh, man.
But like in her journal, she was writing like the guy she wanted to date, the guy she had a crush on, like boyfriend, maybe Aiden, like question mark.
And like what person could potentially be her best friend, maybe.
Yeah, and then she shuts it and walks away to hand a letter to somebody, and I was so sure that when she went back, someone would be reading that and giving her a hard time.
And that's what a typical movie would have done, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. Yeah.
If it were John Hughes, that would have happened.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and that's where the movie stays in that very grounded real life without getting like melodramatic and having these plot points that come up that are typical or that you would expect to be in a movie about it. This is all stuff that it kind of plays out the way you would expect it to be in real life. I think save for maybe one scene, which I imagine we'll get to eventually. I do want to go back to the pool party a bit, and with a moment you were talking about, Chris, where she goes up to the sliding door and the music is playing, and it's this, sort of like electronic upbeat music, which all of the music and the musical cues in the movie I really enjoyed. I think they're very over the top. There's a lot of great humor made with the musical cues. And one of them is when she walks up to that door and she's looking at everybody, and then she decides, okay, I'm going to go out. And she tries to open the door, but it only opens like 4 inches and gets blocked by something and won't open all the way. But the music cuts out and we just get like literally just the sound of the scene and the door. And that to me was maybe my favorite like comedy moment of the whole movie, because it sets up that anxiety that she's feeling, and you see that she's experiencing that and all the stuff that she's worried about, and then bam, immediately the door doesn't open, and it's like not where you expect the humor. That's not where you think the scene is going, right? It fully
she has to like psych herself up to even step out there, and
then it doesn't work.
Yeah, and then so she spends all that time trying to find her groove. The music starts to play. She's going out there, and then it's just like, surprise, you're going to get off on the wrong foot before you even step out on the deck. Like, you're off your game,
Yeah. Any plan you had of how this was going to go is already gone. It's already done. Right?
So let me ask you about the music a little bit. So do you think the music, because it's so over the top and over dramatic, that's a tool to put us in her head? This is the way she sees the scene, right? Is that how you feel about it? That's kind of how I felt about it.
Yeah, the music becomes part of her character, essentially.
Or inner monologue.
It's the soundtrack to her life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So real quick, I wanted to talk about the scene after she hangs out with the Shadow and her friends, and they drop the girl off.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess it's her new high school friend's boyfriend. And as soon
I don't think it's a boyfriend.
Or it's just a guy friend. And as soon as they decide to drop off the older girl first and Kayla second, I think everyone knows where the scene is going. And I assume this is the other part where anxiety was kicked up to like 11, right? That's at least for me it was. This is the scene I was the most anxious in the whole movie. And mainly because I don't want to see Kayla go through these experiences at her current maturity level.
No.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
This is dad anxiety as opposed to being in Kayla's head anxiety.
But even then, her anxiety in the scene and the way Elsie Fisher was playing it had me very uncomfortable.
Yeah. It is both, you're right.
But no, totally. This is exactly what her dad was fearing whenever he was spying on her hanging out with high school guys, in the mall. And she yelled at him, and, him trying to be a good father backed off. But this is what was going through his mind. That
scene is so gut-wrenching and awful, and I love to see how she defends herself at some point. She raises her voice and, and gets upset at him and makes him
I was
stop.
so happy with how far it didn't go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so
I think another movie might have gone further and made it more awkward. And I think this is the one scene where the movie almost dives into like that teenage high school movie trope. But I think what it does with the scene avoids just feeling cliche, right?
I can't get over what the kid says to her afterwards either. He's like, well, I was just trying to help you out. Yeah, one day you're going to be at a party and hook up with somebody. You're not going to know what to do. And she's like, and she apologizes. She's like, I'm sorry. And she, I think, legitimately thinks that she's in the wrong, that he was trying to do her a favor and that she messed it up, right? And that's kind of the thing that makes me angry, is that she feels like she messed up and she didn't do the right thing and she let him down. And yeah, that's pretty awful. Pretty awful.
Yeah, and I want to touch on a little bit what Justin said. I think you're right that it doesn't feel cliche, this scene. But also, I don't know that it ever felt too tropey to me, so much as it just feels like a natural scene that I guess most coming-of-age movies have to have something like this, right? It's part of growing pains.
Yeah, that's the only way I mean that it's tropey. It doesn't feel forced by any means.
Right, and I would say, like, it's a trope, but in the same way that, like, explosions are a trope in action movies. It's just kind of, it comes in the territory, but I agree with you that the movie tackles it in such a way to where you're never
uniquely
like, oh, it's this scene. Instead, you're entirely like, oh, it's this scene. Oh no. It's and well, thankfully it doesn't go so far to where it changes the type of movie that you're in.
Yeah, and that's what I was afraid of too. I was like, come on, please, it's shot uniquely, but it's on the verge of let's not be that movie, all right, guys? Let's not go there. It's done really well. And then I think even better, or it makes that scene better, is the scene afterwards where she comes in and goes to her room and the dad's just like, what's wrong? And she just...
and she knows she can never tell him.
Yeah, she knocks stuff over and he goes in there and she's like pushing him away and the dad is just so helpless and he wants to help her, but he has no idea. And there's this gap between father and daughter that, like a year ago wasn't there and now is permanently there, Yeah.
What's great about that moment is that we don't get the audio of that scene where he goes into the room and he's talking to her, because what comes in is Kayla's YouTube video, like the next one that she makes after that's happened. And we get that audio as like voiceover basically for this scene. So all we see is them in the room and like their actions. We don't actually hear the conversation, which is, to me, all the more powerful.
And those YouTube videos act as such a great transition in between moods and vignettes in the movie, right? Within her experiences over the course of her 8th grade year, or the last few days of it. Her YouTube videos are good transitions into setting up the scene of like, you know, just be yourself. Okay, so we know in this part she's trying that but failing miserably. And that's social media, right? It teaches you how to be brave from a distance, but then completely leaves you clueless when it comes to actual social interaction. You know what I mean? She's in 8th grade, but she's in like 6th grade level maturity in social interaction, right? Or younger, you know, but she's not completely immature. She has a presence on social media. She knows what she needs to do, but she's just does not have those social skills yet.
Yeah, I think there's a big theme in the movie of social media projection and what you put out there versus reality and what you actually are. That's something that I kind of personally feel strongly about, right? Like the people and their parents on social media, right? Like you can't look at someone's social media account and compare your real life to theirs, right? Because you're comparing something fake.
But a 13-year-old girl's not going to understand that, or 12-year-old,
exactly.
Or however old someone in 8th grade is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would argue that there are
adults,
30-year-old people who don't understand that.
Exactly. Yeah.
For sure. And so that's one of the areas that this movie like just really hits home for me is her dealing with that, and her in some ways coming to understand that you need to be yourself first, and you can lie on social media all you want, but you need to actually be yourself and be as awesome as you can in real life. It doesn't really matter what you put on social media, right?
Right.
Do you guys think that the movie as a whole is any sort of commentary on social media and where we are as a society with it? Do you think it's negative or positive or neither?
I don't know that it's a commentary so much as it is a reflection. And I don't know if there have been very many movies since the dawn of social media that I feel have accurately portrayed how I feel about social media and my complicated feelings towards it. Like, it's amazing, and we're all lucky to be able to just type in anyone's name in the world and find them. However, we as a species, it changes our social dynamics in ways that are confusing and unnatural. And I think this movie tackles that in a way that I don't know that a lot of movies have, and I found to be actually really interesting. And one of the things I really, really liked about the movie.
I would agree that it's a reflection more of a commentary, because an 8th grade girl that is in, well, a girl that is in 8th grade today is going to have, unless their parents, you know, don't allow it, but there's going to have social media, and it's going to be different than what it was like for us. And I really like the way that it was depicted in it. You're right, Mike. I think that was done really well. And I was afraid a little bit at first that it was going to go down the commentary track of this is what social media is doing to us, as opposed to what it did, which is just kind of put a mirror up to it and said, this is what we look like, and this is how it works. You know. Anyways, so how about you, Justin?
Yeah, I totally agree. It doesn't seem to be judging social media as a whole or like criticizing it in any way.
No,
it's more like looking at what we do,
showing us the reality of what kids are doing now, regardless of whether or not we like it or don't like it, or if it's good for us or bad for us. It's here, and they're using it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting in the scene where she's hanging out with the high school students in the mall food court, and they're talking about how her, quote, generation, unquote, is different from theirs because they had different social medias. And it's just moving
with the
from
4
like,
years.
Yeah, it's like 3 years apart, 4 years apart, whatever. I thought that was really funny. And just showing how fast it's moving.
Yeah, it sounds silly, but there's actually something to that, you know? Like, there is going to be a difference between someone who had Snapchat in 8th grade versus someone who didn't get Snapchat until senior year. Like, there is going to be it's not a generational difference like he was saying, but there's going to be a difference in how, like, the level of understanding at a younger age.
We kind of went through this before. Like, I'm older than you guys, and you guys got Facebook, or Facebook and MySpace at a younger age than I did. Are we that much different? Or
I would say we were when we were younger. I think as you get older, the differences get less important and less obvious. But whenever you are an 8th grader and you're using Snapchat, like it's good. It's just, I don't know. Maybe there's nothing to it, but I remember whenever I was in high school, a year felt like a very long time. And I did a lot of growing in the course of a year. And like if a convenience or a tool is there, you're going to grow up with that tool, right? Mm-hmm. And you're just not going to know what life was like without it. You know, like I don't know what life was like for kids who had to play Atari.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that was something that I never experienced.
Well,
it may not be a huge
about it.
Well, but the point is, it may not be a huge significant thing, but I think it's an interesting conversation, like Justin was saying, that kids that age are going to be looking at, because a year to them is huge. That is a generation.
When we were in high school, we were different than you were when you were in high school, right? And even though there's not that many years between us now, and I think in some ways I look at myself and I'm a lot more similar to my dad, who is like 20 years older than I am to like freshmen in college, which are 12 years, or depending on when they start college, like 10 to 12 years younger than me, right? Yeah. They're closer in age, but I feel a lot more distance from them. And I think by the time in 20 years, they'll feel a lot closer to me than they will the 10 years before them, right? It's interesting the way that works.
Yeah, so the last thing that I really wanted to talk about was the campfire scene with her dad. Yeah, this is the scene that got me in the whole movie. And at first it didn't. I went through the whole scene, or what I thought was the whole scene, and I was like, I'm good. You know, right. I'm not gonna get choked up. But then he mentioned the part where he was saying, you know, I thought I was gonna have to teach you to be nice and teach you to be kind and to share, but you just started doing all those things on your own. Once he got to that segment of the speech, it got me. I was there for that, and I thought the scene was wonderful and very moving. And I thought both Josh Hamilton and Elsie Fisher nailed it.
Yeah, that got me. I think the moment that I found the most touching in that scene was after we've spent this whole movie and she's been annoyed by her dad the whole time. She realizes what he's said to him and how nice it is, and she just like curls up in his lap. And yeah, it's just a really great ending to that scene. And you're right, that scene is the cherry on top of the sundae.
Yeah, he spends the whole movie, you know, joking around and trying to connect with her as a dad, but more in like a really friendly way. And I think he even kind of drops that in the scene and opens up and gets very real with her. And it's super touching. You know, I don't know that it got me teared up, but I certainly felt moved. Like I got a little bit of like goosebumps from it. It's a really good scene, and one that I was worried might get a little sappy, but it doesn't. Because, you know, we talked about the lack of melodrama or the lack of like tropes or whatever, but something we haven't talked about is that the mom is not in the movie at all, right? She's gone. And I thought we were going to get into that scene a little bit, because he says, you know, when your mom left, and then he goes on from there. And that's something they really don't let affect the movie too much. The fact that the mom's not there, other than in that one moment where he mentions it, but it's not really the focus of why the mom left or how she feels of being without a mom, right?
Yeah, that's the only real clue you get as to what happened.
Which I think is something really great about the movie, that it doesn't let itself go down that road and stays focused on the dad and Kayla.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually thinking that throughout the course of the movie, I was kind of getting annoyed with her dad. And I was like, this guy jokes too much. He needs to just be more of a dad and less of like a buddy. And in that campfire scene, that comes away, like you were saying. And I found myself connecting with that character for the first time throughout the course of the movie. And I really enjoyed it. But it took a while to get there. But when it did, I think it really paid off. One thing that I didn't notice, but my girlfriend actually went with us to the theater to see this, and later she was asking, I don't remember what the popular girl's name was, but you remember how the popular girl invited Kayla to the pool party despite her daughter's wishes?
The popular mom.
Well, I guess she was a popular mom. Sure, yeah, I guess she was
the mom
cool
got
mom.
the popular girl. Kennedy was the...
It seemed like the mom living through her popular daughter.
Right.
But it seemed like when she invited Kayla, she mentioned something like, hey, your dad is this, 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 and this. And then later, apparently, whenever she goes to the pool party, that same mom was like, oh, I guess he didn't show. So
where's your dad?
Yeah, so it seemed like she was just interested in Kayla's dad.
Yeah, I did get that vibe.
Which makes sense because it looked like he had a pretty good job based on the house they were living in.
I did not put that together, but
I didn't either, but my girlfriend did, and I was like, hey, that's pretty cool.
She was probably interested in the dad. He's relatively handsome, like in an average Joe kind of way.
For like a normal dad.
For a divorcee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, hopefully that popular girl's mom was able to make that happen sometime after the movie ended.
Let's hope so. Okay, so I have 2 more things I want to talk about real quick. One of them is the moment in the pool scene after she calls her dad and she wants to go home. She steps out afterwards while we've got like her YouTube voiceover talking about being confident, and then she goes and it seems that she goes and does karaoke at the pool party, right, in front of everybody, in front of the popular girl and all these people that she's been anxious around up until this point. I'm not totally sure that this scene is real. I have no clues in the movie to tell me that it wasn't real or that it was like in her head, but it just seems so against her character. Part of me says like that can't be real. Like I don't understand why she would do that at this point.
She got a boost of confidence from Aiden with the good eyes.
Yeah, he talked to her. And I think it's real. I like the moment. We haven't actually talked about him. Oh, we did talk about him a little bit, but Gabe, you see Gabe smiling at her like he's the only one paying attention to her singing.
Yeah, the other thing I want to talk about is Gabe, but we can move to that in a second.
Okay, cool, yeah.
Yeah, well, I took it at face value. I took it more as that's how it happens. So you can do things against your nature every now and then because sometimes it's like a moment of clarity. It's like a moment of confidence. Like she was on her way home. She'd given up on the pool party. She'd spent all her sad emotions out and cried them out by herself. Yelled at her dad, got all those emotions out, and then the guy she crushes on comes up and says, what are you doing in here? Everyone's in there. And with that, she's like, oh, he expects me to be with everyone else. I'm one of everyone else. And then she's able to just, for a minute, go in there and just show him what's up. I don't think that was like something that would last until the next day, but it's the first step. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I would say from personal experience, when you do feel that anxiety and that anxiousness, you can either, like, there's a choice. You're always going to feel that anxiousness, but you're like, I'm either going to stand behind everybody and never be noticed, or I'm going to just do the craziest things and act out, kind of like go too far the other way, right? Does that make sense?
Right. We see this behavior again later whenever she gets a wild hair to just go up to the popular girl and basically be like, hey, you're rude.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the same thing. It's like a spurt of like, you know what? I am in the right, and I'm okay with that. There's few and far between, but those spurts are going to get more and more, I think, as she gets older.
I actually really enjoyed that scene as well because she never looks the popular girl in the eyes. She looks down the whole time, but she's standing up for herself, and she's actually taken she realizes that she's worthwhile, and she's taken some of her own advice, I think. And I really enjoyed that scene.
And some of her dad's advice. Like, it's right after the campfire scene we were talking about earlier, and it feels like her dad's words really sunk into her, and she realized she has a lot of good qualities that are all hers, and her dad didn't teach her. And I think that's very sweet.
All right, so I think we can move on to Gabe,
the hero of the movie.
Yeah. I absolutely love
MVP.
Gabe. Yeah, he has maybe 6 minutes of screen time, if that, and like maybe a little more, a little less, whatever. I mean, he almost steals the movie.
Yeah,
like he's who I drove home from the theater thinking about and laughing about.
Gabe, the character kind of does rescue this movie and gives it a little bit more hope. You can do it with the stuff with the father, but the fact that there's somebody else that we see that sees the value in her makes it more hopeful. And I mean, Gabe from the minute we see him, what kind of guy he is, and that he's into her. I loved when he texted her, I don't know. I'm 100% pro Gabe.
Yeah.
I agree. I think
Gabe 2020.
What's so charming about Gabe is, and their relationship in general is, the whole time Kayla is trying to grow up, and she's trying to put herself in situations where she has to react more mature than she's capable of acting. And the whole time, I'm thinking to myself, slow down, girl. You're not the same level as these other 8th graders. You know what I mean? You're maybe should have been held back a grade. You know, like her maturity's just not there. Yeah. And then she meets Gabe at the pool party. And I remember thinking right then and there, these are the friends she needs to be hanging out with. Like the kids who also don't have themselves figured out yet. You know what I mean? Like the kids who are still playing with like lightsaber spoons and going to summer camp. The ones who are still more 8th graders than they are high schoolers, you know? And they will likely be that way for a little bit longer. So I really enjoyed Gabe's scene at the end because whenever she goes and meets him and she starts to really hit it off, they're okay and they're comfortable just being awkward together and just feeling it out and learning how to talk to another human being their own age.
Right. Yeah, they're actually acting their own age and being themselves for a change.
Yeah, not trying to act older, not trying to be more mature than they are.
I don't know if it's maturity or if it's social status. You know, they're not trying to achieve another social status or
I think it's maturity and social status go hand in hand. I think it's like, look at the popular girl. Look at the swimsuit she's wearing. Look at the way she's texting on her phone, the way guys look at her differently versus Kayla. They're the same age, and they might as well be like opposite ends of the spectrum. Unlike, I'm not saying the popular girl's mature, but the way she acts and the way that everyone's trying to act. They're trying to act old, and they're trying to act like grown-ups, and they're trying to hook up with one another, and their hormones are going crazy. And Kayla has that stuff going on too, but she can't even have a conversation about like what's going on with her day.
Yeah.
And she's trying to throw herself into like crazy adult situations. So when she meets Gabe, it feels like her finding someone who's more on her social level and who she can mature with.
The maturity level is the social status, right? Because that's what her whole YouTube channel is based off of, is giving people advice as to how to be better people and how to, you know, it's all about self-improvement, right? And I think that's one thing that happens on social media, or that's what I feel like looking at the people who are like in 8th grade or the younger generation. It's like they're acting so mature. And I think it's because of social media, because I think that's what it makes you want to be, because you have social media friends who are older than you. They're in high school when you're in 8th grade, or they're in college when you're in high school. And they seem so cool. They seem so mature, so knowledgeable. And you try to be that also on social media. And then in turn, like those two girls, like the popular girl and her friend, like literally barely look up from their phone and don't have a conversation with somebody and try to act like they don't care about anything, because that's what's cool. That's what's like mature, right? And
I guess I'm not, because that's what's cool. That doesn't make them mature, though.
No, but what they perceive as mature.
Perceived.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So they're all trying to be more mature. Because that's what makes you a cooler person to them, right? That's what puts you in a higher social status.
Right.
And
meanwhile, Kayla is Googling what is shaped like a banana.
Yeah. Yeah. More than I think that those two are behind, which I mean, I think they are in some senses. It's more like in that moment, they don't have to try to be ahead. Like everyone else is trying really hard to be ahead of where they are. I think other people are probably just as awkward. Like I think if those two girls tried to have a real conversation that wasn't them staring at their phone and ignoring you, they might end up being nearly as awkward as Kayla.
Exactly. But within their own social status in the school, they are the cool, mature, grown-up 8th graders that Kayla is trying to mimic.
Right.
Even though she's not anywhere near ready. So it's really nice to see her with Gabe at the end, because they're not even talking about like kissing or taking off shirts or truth or dare. They're talking about like summer camp and like an award he got for hitting 3 bullseyes.
that was the best.
What is that doing here? I didn't mean to leave that out.
Exactly.
That's so funny.
And so that is a relief to see her. That's where she needs to be.
And my favorite part is all the sauces spread out.
Yeah. And organized by color.
Yeah. And he's like, I like them all equally.
Cool. Does anybody have anything else?
Yeah. No,
man. Another good one for 2018. Put it in the books.
Yeah, this is very high up there for me. I really love it.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. All right. So that wraps up our review for Bo Burnham's 8th grade. So real quick, let's go ahead and move into the winner of our latest Casually Criterion poll, where we chose the movie that we'll be going over next.
So the options, again, were Charade by Stanley Donen, Notorious by Alfred Hitchcock, and Army of Shadows by Jean-Pierre Melville.
Yes, the theme was espionage, and those were the three we all chose from. The poll just ended today as we record this. And Justin, do you want to announce the winner?
The winner is, drum roll, sound effect I may or may not add later.
Probably not.
No, I'm not going to. It's Notorious. Alfred Hitchcock's Notorious. Alfred Hitchcock's Notorious won, which was Mike's pick. So congratulations, Mike, for winning the first Casually Criterion poll thing.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it's nice to say that we're all winners here because we all get to watch Notorious again. Yeah. So that's awesome.
It's true. But I'm the winner.
No, we're all winners.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm excited. I really love this movie. The first time I watched it forever ago, and I say forever, it's like 10 years, but that feels like forever sometimes.
It's about 1/3 of your life so far.
That's true. Wow.
All right, well, that just got modeling real fast.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we're watching Notorious by Alfred Hitchcock, starring Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman, one of his espionage spy thrillers. Yeah.
And you know what you guys should do? You guys should watch it with us, and that way, so go ahead and pull it out of your collection, go rent it on Amazon or wherever it's available, watch it with us, and then that way you're ready to listen and talk to us about it when we do it in a few weeks.
So that should be out before the end of August, and that's all I got.
Yeah, I think that does it for the show.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for talking with me today, Mike and Chris.
You're welcome, Justin.
Thank you for listening.
You, Justin.
Thank you, listener, for listening. And thanks, Jake Wagner-Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. You can hear more of his music at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
All right, next week's episode will likely be The Meg, unless something more interesting rolls into our towns, and we can go see that.
Yeah, we were going to do Christopher Robin until 8th grade popped up.
Yeah, you're welcome, everyone.
I'm so happy that it did.
Yeah, he was trying to convince us to go see The Spy Who Dumped Me instead of Christopher Robin.
I was.
Which I wasn't going to do.
I was just going to pretend that I'd seen it and talk about it.
I was going to watch the first season of Outlander again and just talk about that instead of The Spy.
Talk about Outlander. It's just a very confusing conversation.
All right, so if you want to stay tuned with what we're watching next, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. And don't forget to review us on iTunes.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys, for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Gucci. What did that mean exactly? Was it just a thing she said? Is that a thing that I don't know about because I'm too old? I know it's a brand, but is that a thing that people say and I'm just out of the loop?